Chapter 781. The Last Angle 4. It was as if the very life was getting sucked out of me. The moment the sword pierced, and blood spilled out, I felt a massive wave of weakness as the mana inside of my body began to fade completely. I felt my form slowly begin to fade in the process as I struggled to hold still. Hold on, keep steady, hold on. At that moment, I wasn't truly a body of flesh and blood. What I inhabited was more like a shell formed entirely of mana, holding my shape together and sustaining my movements. It mimicked my appearance well enough, but beneath the surface, there was no warmth, no heartbeat. Just raw and pure energy. But with that being said, it wasn't as simple as that. I could still carry items with me, and I could use all of my abilities. It was an ability that defied common sense, one I could barely comprehend myself, as I tightened my grip around the sword in my hand, feeling the mana fading rapidly from my body. Quote. Exclamation mark question mark quote. Julian's body began to tremble before me. His eyes were wide open, his face pale as confusion marred his features. Ook, only sounds escaped his mouth in the end. He was never able to utter a single thing as I focused all of my attention on the sword as it glowed in the room. The soul trapped within slowly started to infuse itself into the body as it quietly accepted it. Right, his body already contains my blood inside. Julian had drunk it in the past. It was during the gold mine incident. I remember clearly giving him the vial that contained my blood. Back then, I didn't really have a full picture of the situation, but it was clear now. That was all preparation for this moment. Noel was the one to have arranged it, and with it, the chalice was also handed to Leon. With my blood flowing through him, slipping my old soul into his body became effortless. His eyes widened in horror, saliva spilling past his lips as his body convulsed. He thrashed violently, his pale face twisted with shock and disbelief. Yet, no matter how fiercely he fought, it was meaningless. His struggle held no weight against what was already decided. Thump, his head fell onto the table shortly after. The surroundings fell into a state of total silence as I stared at the scene before me without saying a word. I felt extremely weak, and I could barely keep myself standing. However, I knew that things weren't over yet. Single quote. Right, my memories. I understood the reason why I had to erase my memories. No, not just erase. I had to alter them slightly. It was all to protect me from the knowledge that slowly consumed my mind due to the powers that I held. This was the reason why I had died in the past, and also the reason why I had to erase my memories. Thankfully, I already knew the perfect method. Reaching into the air, I pulled out a small vial filled with a thick red liquid, its surface glinting faintly under the dim light. I took a deep breath at the sight. Noel's blood. Looking at the current state of Julian, and seeing all of the blood that was leaking out of his body, I understood that this was my only choice. At this rate, he was going to die. Ha, ha. At the same time, I couldn't help but laugh. I was suddenly reminded of a certain incident in the past. It was one where I found myself trapped inside a certain cult. Back then, I didn't understand the meaning behind such a situation, but it became extremely clear to me now. In a way, that was a message. Or more like, a clue. A clue regarding the effects of Noel's blood on me, and what I needed to do with it. Drip, drip, I spilled the blood onto the body. Twitch. Immediately, the body began to twitch as I could feel the soul slowly starting to assimilate with the body. At the same time, I used the ring to alter the memories a tiny bit. Not by much, just a tiny bit. The process wasn't difficult, taking less than a few seconds, since it involved only minor changes. But it still wasn't over. I took out a small mirror from my dimensional space and held it in front of me. Mana drained deeper from within my body as I worked to seal Julian's soul inside the body. Unfortunately, with my mana running so low, the seal wasn't as tight as it should have been. But it was still enough as the main soul started to take over. And not long after, ook, a light groan escaped the body not long after. I'm alive, his voice came out hoarse. As his eyes shot open, I heard an audible gulp as he stared blankly at the area before him. He was most likely looking at the system. I hadn't fully realized it until this moment, but the system was something that had been arranged by my past self. It was bound deep within my soul, just like the four-leaf clover that rested there as well. How is this possible? Hearing the words of surprise coming from me, I looked at myself. I looked so lost and confused. Staring at him, my lips quivered as I struggled to stay still. The mana inside my body had been almost completely drained as I accidentally staggered back. Clank. Quote. Exclamation mark quote. A sudden noise jolted through me as I backed into something, knocking something by accident. Oh, shit, the sound echoed faintly, and almost immediately, a head snapped in my direction. His eyes scanned in my direction with incredible tension, and for a moment, it almost felt as though our gazes met. But then, quote. No one. He eventually pulled his gaze away, a frown marring his features. Looks like ook. A scream echoed from out of his chest not long after. Ack. His screams echoed so loudly that I had no choice but to cast a small barrier to block out the noise he was causing as his body started to shake and spasm. Ha, ok, what the? It was also at that moment that he finally took notice of the sword jutting out from his chest. How? Staring at him, I silently cursed inside my mind. I'm still not done yet. The soul had yet to fully bind with the body. Clenching my teeth, I moved forward and held onto the sword, piercing the sword deeper into my chest. Surprisingly, no screams followed my action. The pain must have been too much for my old self to bear, but I pushed on, pouring every ounce of mana in my body into the sword. Drip, drip, blood trickled down, staining the floor beneath. Like the repetitive tick of a clock, the blood persistently trickled down the ground. I listened to the sound as I watched, my face pale. Aha. Seeing that he was just about to pass out, I stopped and staggered back. Drip, drip. The faint dripping sound continued to echo in the background as I tried my best to recover myself. Not yet. I wasn't done yet. Taking out Noel's blood, I was just about to pour it on the ground, when... Is this what hell feels like? I froze on the spot, my mind blanking upon hearing my words. It feels like shit. The words were enough to make me pause for a moment. Hell, was this truly hell? I used to think like this in the past, but was that really the case anymore? Sizzle tilde. A sharp sizzling sound echoed through the air. I watched as my eyes widened, the body jerking violently. That was when my gaze shifted down to the forearm, where a tattoo had suddenly appeared. So, it's that. Moving closer to my old self, I pressed down quietly onto his shoulder and used my emotive magic to keep him calm. At the same time, I started to pour my emotive magic onto him. Fear and sadness. These were the main emotions that I poured onto myself. I need to be desperate. In order for me to survive with no memories, I needed to establish a sense of desperation within my body. This became clear to me from the cult situation. Because I wasn't desperate enough, I wasn't able to act like I did at the start. Without that desperation, I'd turn into a completely different person. Once again, the situation became clear to me. All of it was all foreshadowing and clues for this one moment. Quote. A tattoo. As my old self noticed the tattoo on his arm, I began to look around before taking out the remainder of the blood and pouring it on the ground. The tattoo glowed faintly for a brief moment. It was also in that specific moment that his eyes widened in shock. The world seemed to freeze. Noel's blood began to move against reason, the pool beneath him reversing as though time itself was unwinding. Slowly, it climbed, defying gravity, and returned to his body. Quote. The elaborate blood patterns woven on his forearm began to shift and retract, seamlessly returning to his chest, where the sword appeared. At the same time, I reached for the sword and slowly began to pull it back. Last push. Thankfully, drawing the sword out was easier than driving it in. It only took a few seconds before I managed to pull it free. Clank. The sword dropped to the ground not long after as I turned my attention towards the door. My heart raced the moment it did as a purple orb appeared in my mind, and I phased through the wall of the room, coming out of it and fixing my gaze on the gray-eyed figure that was approaching the room. He was a lot younger, but it was without a doubt Leon. No, not yet. I pressed my hand forward and grabbed onto Leon's face. He froze on the spot a moment later, his face blanking for a moment as I used my emotive magic on him. Despite my best attempt at holding back, Leon's body began to tremble at my action, his face paling. Oh, shit. I held on like this for the next minutes before finally letting go of him as he paused, his hand reaching for his head. What just? He looked confused at first, but after a short moment, he managed to recover as he opened the door. Clank. Young master. That moment marked the moment when my fateful encounter with Leon occurred. Staring at the scene in silence, I rubbed my head. Single quote. Did I go too hard on him? Leon's face was a little pale because of my actions. I felt a little sorry, but thankfully, it wasn't anything big. The scene played out as I remembered in the past. And it was as the two left the room and passed me that I recalled something. Oh, right, I looked at Leon and then the younger version of me. Back then, I did notice that his face was pale. I pursed my lips. I guess that makes sense. I rubbed the bridge of my nose, shaking my head while walking back into the room, and settling my gaze onto the fourth leaf. Should be almost time for me to return as well. I had done everything that I needed to do. For those confused, the reference chapters are 3, and the first part of Chapter 4. Chapter 782, Darkness of Resentment 1. Coming back into the room, I sat down on the chair and took a deep breath. I was exhausted, and the mana was completely drained out of my body. Just remaining standing was difficult for me, but I understood that things were still not over. But at the same time, I've completed the most difficult step. I had finally managed to set everything in motion. My transmigration, and everything that was related to it. It all became clear to me, and so did the next steps that I needed to take. I planned on taking the little time that I had left here to recover as much as possible. I knew that the moment I returned to the future, things were going to be quite hectic. While I wasn't fully aware of what had happened in the time that I was gone, I knew that several years had passed, and in those years, Julian had most likely done a lot of things with the body. Thinking about all of the misunderstandings and damage that had occurred to my reputation, I felt my heart sink. I couldn't help but groan. To me, it had all happened in matters of minutes, but for everyone else, it was clear that a lot of time had passed. I hoped they'd believe in my nonsense. Nonetheless, this was something that I had expected beforehand. Thankfully, I don't have to worry about Delilah. I had already told her about what would happen. At least, it gave her an idea. Furthermore, I knew that Delilah could see through Julian. It had happened before, but then again, she was most likely busy with other things. I wonder if she's managed to reach the zenith in the end. She had been quite close to reaching it before I left her. If my estimates were correct, she should have already reached such a tier. Now that I think about it, she's not far from where I am. I directed my gaze in a certain direction. For a moment, I almost felt the urge to go see her. However, I managed to restrain myself. I knew that was going to be a stupid idea. She didn't know who I was, and given how she'd see through my strength, I'd be restrained by her instantly. Thankfully, my presence was extremely thin at the moment. Otherwise, I would have been afraid of being found out. Taking another breath, I continued to remain seated. Slowly, I could feel myself starting to recover. While I was still not in the most optimal state, I had reached a point where I felt a lot more at ease. The next and final step of the plan was going to be crucial, and soon. Already, the world before me darkened. The effect of the third leaf ended abruptly, and I found myself back in a familiar place. The scent of dust hung in the air, and faint traces of warmth drifted down from above. I felt it all. A head appeared in my grasp as Leon stood on the opposite end, his gaze fixed on me. The world was still completely frozen. I didn't know the reason for this, but I knew that it likely had to do with the sword. Staring at the head in my grasp, I lowered my hand and carefully extracted the eye embedded within it. Blood spurted all over my hand. I tossed the head away, moving towards the corpse on the floor before taking the last bit of Noelle's blood and dropping it on the body. Instantly, tendrils shot out from the decapitated section of the neck, the outline of a head slowly forming. I stared at the sight without saying a word, my eyes narrowing faintly as I took in the scene in silence. Though a few things still didn't quite make sense to me, I knew this wasn't the moment to get lost in questions. The blood had already begun to work its way through, and before long, a head reformed where there had been none. As I watched the body slowly knit itself back together, the wounds fading with unnatural ease, a creeping sense of unease settled in. I hope I won't have to lose my memories once I enter it again. Having just used Noelle's blood, I was aware of the possibility. Thankfully, it wasn't like I wasn't unprepared. This wasn't the first time I had experienced something like this. That was when my eyes finally fell on the sword that was impaled on the body. Taking a deep breath, I placed my hand over it. Are you? I paused for a moment, lifting my head to stare at the trembling figure before me. Our eyes met for a brief moment, and soon I smiled. Yes. I poured the last of my mana into it, feeling a powerful suction pull at me, drawing me into the sword. The world suddenly changed. Suddenly, everything went bright. The world around me vanished, replaced by pure, blinding white. After the initial wave of confusion, a brief clarity settled over me as I stared at the figure before me, his expression twisted and his gaze fixed squarely on me. Why? He only said one word. However, I could feel the raw emotion in his voice as he spoke. Why are you doing this to me? From anger and resentment to reluctant acceptance, I could feel a storm of emotions coursing through him, his face twisting ever further with each passing moment. What did I do that is so wrong? I know, I wasn't the greatest of people, but I've changed. I'm not the same person that I used to be in the past. Are you really, though? The words flowed out of my mouth freely as I looked at Julian. I knew that this was most likely going to be the last time that the two of us were going to see each other. In a way, this was going to be the end of an ill-fated relationship. It was time for the two of us to have one last conversation. What do you mean? I've changed. You haven't changed. I shook my head, keeping my gaze fixed on Julian standing before me. His mouth began to move, but I didn't let the words come. While I don't understand what you've done in the time that I was gone, I can see that you haven't changed at all. I suddenly pointed at my eyes while staring at him. You of all people should be aware of my power. I can see things that other people can't see. Emotions. I could see the emotions of the people that I laid my eyes on, and you're black. The man who stood before me was entirely painted in black. Anger, fear, he was a mass of every negative emotion, fused together. I could see it more clearly than ever. He was the very embodiment of all that was dark and destructive within the human heart. It was enough to send chills down my body. Just how could someone? You may think you've changed, but the truth is you've only learned to contain the resentment and darkness that dwell within you. At your core, you're still the same person you were before. Quote. A heavy silence settled over the surroundings as Julian fixed his gaze on me, his features twisting in countless ways. The delicate mask that had hidden his face began to crack, revealing the truth beneath. A mask forged from pure resentment, contorting his face into something almost unrecognizable. Are you really going to try and take what's mine until the end? His voice came out hoarse, the hair on my skin starting to rise. Quote. I didn't answer. However, that silence was all that needed to be said between the two of us as Julian's face contorted significantly. Eventually, a smile played at his lips as he nodded. Very well. The surrounding temperature dropped considerably following his words. Moments later, purple hands began to emerge from every direction, and the world around me was swallowed by complete darkness. I stared at the scene in silence, remaining still as I looked around. Now that I was back in the body, the mana that I had access to was a lot more than before. If I wanted to, I could have probably fought him. But there's no need to do that. Swoosh, swoosh, the hands shot past my body, fading shortly after. What? Julian's face paused, his eyes widening in confusion. How is this? Wait, I shook my head. There's no point in the two of us fighting. I've long arranged all of this. The only reason why the two of us are even talking with one another is because I allowed it to happen. Not because you had the chance of taking over. Julian's lips trembled. Soft words came out of his mouth. What are you talking about? What do you mean? Wait, this is my body. The darkness that latched onto his body grew. If before there was even a little bit of light in the darkness had completely taken over his entire body. He had become darkness itself. No, I can't allow this. This is my body. How can you think of taking my body? Why do you want my body? This is mine, 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 mine. His eyes turned completely red, his chest rising and falling continuously as he directed his gaze towards me, sending soft chills down my body as I kept my eyes on him. No, this can't happen. I won't allow it to happen. Won't allow, 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 won't allow. He looked to have completely lost it, the resentment boiling down on his chest having taken complete hold of his mind. I stared at the scene for a brief moment until I took a step forward, causing Julian to pause as he looked at me. The resentment in his gaze only grew, but I dismissed it completely as I took another step, inching closer to him. Yes, come to me. As if finally understanding that there was no way out for him, he stopped struggling. Instead, he seemed to welcome me as his lips pulled into a creepy smile. Come, 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 come. The closer I arrived to him, the greater the chills that I felt. At this very moment, I had the power to end it all completely. But I can't let go of this opportunity. The resentment, the anger, all of it, I wanted it. I had never seen such negative emotions so condensed and packed tightly together. I wanted to absorb them to fuel the growth of my emotive magic, and as I arrived before him, I paused. The world fell silent in an instant, our eyes locking for a brief moment before I lifted my hand and pressed it against his head. That was the moment I did it. That was the moment I absorbed him. Chapter 783, Darkness or Resentment 2. Author note: in this chapter, whenever Julian is referred to, it's talking about Og Julian. Pure darkness. A darkness so pure that it almost felt chilling. Such was Julian's existence. From the moment he was born to the last moments of his life. He was nothing but a ball of darkness and resentment. Regardless of how hard he tried to contain that darkness, it was impossible to contain. The darkness was simply overwhelming. Weak. A scream ripped across the surroundings. It was loud and heart-wrenching. Julian's eyes snapped open, bloodshot and burning as they locked onto me, while I strained to draw in the darkness that writhed within his body. Shit. I realized rather quickly that this was no regular darkness. The moment I tried to absorb it, I felt an intense and overwhelming sensation. My thoughts grew murky, and a heavy heat built up in my chest as faint, indistinct voices began whispering at the edges of my mind. Kill, 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 kill. The voices were overwhelming, and for a moment, I started to see red. I started to see Julian's world and vision. Let me go, you piece of shit. His screams echoed as I continued to absorb the darkness. Yet with every passing second, the weight on my body grew heavier, pressing down on me from all directions. The voices clawed at the edges of my mind, louder and louder, until they were all I could hear. Kill, kill, kill. My chest tightened, my thoughts began to scatter, and for a brief moment, I felt myself slipping, struggling to hold on as I tried to pull every last drop of resentment out of him. How could anyone? I'll kill you, 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 I'll kill you. Clenching my teeth, notifications began to receive notifications one after another. I could see my emotive magic starting to improve as my chest started to heave up and down repeatedly, a burning sensation reaching my mind as I took deep and steady breaths. But, kill, 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 kill. The voices continued to whisper in my mind. They became more and more relentless as this situation went on, and I quickly realized that I was starting to become overwhelmed by them as my vision started to grow red. A pair of bloodshot eyes filled my vision, appearing in all directions as the resentment that was entering my head was starting to take complete hold of my mind. I started to struggle, trying my best to keep the resentment at bay. I couldn't let it control me, but that was easier said than done. Kill, 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 kill. The resentment was in its purest form, and the voices that whispered in my mind grew even more pronounced, taking over my thoughts. I started to struggle as well, my mind swelling from the voice. And just when I thought the situation was turning for the worst. Father, where is mother? I don't see her anymore. She's gone. Why? Single quote. Single quote. A certain conversation whispered in my mind. One that faded in the background of the other voices that whispered in my mind, but the more I paid attention to it, the more I realized what it was as I stared at Julian. His eyes were still bloodshot, and his gaze was twisted, but within the darkness contained within his body, I felt something. Tiny as it was. Kill, 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 why won't you tell me? Single quote. It's because of me, right? I am the reason. I am the reason why mother left. I'm strange, aren't I? Why am I strange? The more I paid attention to the voice that whispered in the background of the resentment, the more I started to feel the other emotion. I tried my best to pay attention to it, and as I did, my chest started to tremble. It was painful, but the pain was different compared to the other pains that I had felt. This pain, it was a lot more raw than anything else that I had felt. This was sadness. It became clear to me rather quickly what sort of pain this was. It was sadness, one that made me pause for a moment. But that proved to be a mistake as the resentment took over my mind shortly after. Kill, 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 kill. It started to overwhelm my thoughts, and for just the briefest of moments, I started to feel a certain impulse as I stared at Julian, feeling the sudden need to squeeze his head into a pulp. I clenched my hand over their head, my grip tightening. Kill, I should kill him. I started to think about everything that he had done to me, and felt the anger and resentment that had started to boil inside my mind start to become even clearer. Kill, 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 kill. I really wanted to kill this fucker. For everything that he had done to me. For all the misunderstandings that he had probably caused with his actions. Fuck. My teeth clenched tightly, and my fingers dug deeper as the groan of his skull reached my ears. My grip kept tightening, and under the pressure, his face began to twist, his features warping with pain. Ha, ha, ha. His heavy breaths echoed in my ears as he stared straight at me, his bloodshot eyes locked onto mine without wavering. It was then that I noticed it. Subtle, yet unmistakable droplets tracing down the sides of his cheeks, catching the dim light as they fell. It was the sight that made me pause for a moment. Wait, what? Crying? Why was he? A strange clarity seeped into my mind shortly after, cutting through the haze even as the voices continued to whisper and coil around inside my head. Did mother leave because I'm weird? I hear voices in my mind. They tell me to do things. I don't want to do them, but they keep telling me to do it. Ha. My hand trembled as the sound of my own breath roared inside my mind, each inhale and exhale louder than the last. Staring at Julian, at the tears streaming down his face, for a fleeting moment, I managed to blur out all the resentment piling up inside my head. I set everything aside and just stared at him. I truly started to look at him. He was a mess. His eyes were bloodshot, saliva spilled from the side of his mouth, and his expression was filled with nothing but anger as weird noises came out of his mouth. However, now that I truly looked at him, I saw it. The desperation in his eyes as he looked at me. Let me, go. He hoarsely spoke, his face trembling. Let me go. Please. The desperation was all too clear to me now. The anger and resentment burning inside him were still just as powerful as before, but something else began to surface. A faint glow, blue in color, seeped through the cracks of the darkness I had been slowly absorbing, pushing its way in, spreading like ink in water until it began to take over the shadows within him. I want to. The more I absorbed the darkness, the greater the blue became. The sadness. The bloodshot gaze started to change, and the tears started to stream down more. Drip, drip, Herc. He started to weep. He looked pathetic. For a moment, I started to waver. Seeing the sadness that was hidden within all that resentment, I nearly felt compelled to stop. However, clenching my teeth, I remained firm. Tears trickled down Julian's face as I quietly absorbed the remaining resentment, the voices whispering in my mind just as much as before. Kill, 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 pathetic, 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 pathetic. No, in fact, they started to grow even more pronounced, and the more I heard them, the more joy I started to feel in watching him despair before my very eyes. Yes, this is how it should be. Cry more, you bastard. Cry for everything that you've caused. You deserve nothing but pain. I started to feel scared by my own thoughts, but they weren't thoughts that I could pause. They grew more noticeable and unstoppable with the resentment that entered my mind. I knew that it was dangerous and that I needed to stop it, but staring at the numerous notifications that appeared before my very eyes, I didn't want to stop. Yes, keep it going. Place lease. Stop. Julian's squeals echoed in the background as a sickening smile formed on my lips. Watching him suffer brought so much joy to me, and I started to lose myself in the emotions. Yes, 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 yes. I felt disgusting, sickening, and yet more, 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 more. I couldn't stop myself. I lost myself completely to the emotions as I absorbed everything that there was to offer. Feeling the emotive magic that had been stagnant for quite some time grow and reach a whole new level that I had never thought was possible, I squealed with ecstasy. Yes, more. I began to laugh, losing myself completely in the emotions. Staring at the trembling figure before my very eyes, I screamed at the top of my lungs. Scream more. Beg more. Stop. Haha, yes, let me hear it more. Let me. Don't become like me. Huh, what did he just? Why you're becoming like me. The smile froze for a moment, my gaze turning to Julian as he trembled under my grasp. As voices continued to whisper in my mind, Julian's gaze remained fixed on me. Don't become like me. He muttered again, his voice shaky and trembling. Don't become like you. What? Clear. Julian cut me off, his voice sounding better. My mind is clear. For the first time, Julian raised his head to look at me. His eyes, no longer bloodshot, were clear as they looked at me. And, in that moment, I saw it. Clarity. A sharp and unwavering clarity. His eyes. They were so clear, so painfully bright, that for an instant it felt blinding. My hands faltered, and I stopped whatever I was doing. That was the moment when the world around me appeared to stop. Julian stared at me as his chest trembled. You've got to stop. He spoke, his voice breaking through the many voices that whispered in the air. That clouded my mind. Why, you're becoming a spitting image of me. From the moment Julian was born, he understood he was different. He understood that a certain darkness lived within his mind. A darkness that he couldn't contain. As a child, he tried his best to contain it. But, ultimately, he failed. Evelyn was the first one to see his darkness. Leon was the first one to experience it. His mother was the first one to run away from it. He didn't understand it back then, but his mind was clear now. The darkness was no longer present, and it all became clear to him. Single quote. It's all my fault. The world changed in his eyes. The voices that whispered in his head were gone, and the constant boiling within his chest disappeared. Staring at the figure standing before him, his face twisted with anger and resentment, Julian realized he was looking at a reflection of himself. He was staring at who he had been his entire life. For the first time, he could see the ugliness in himself. He didn't want to look at it any longer. He felt disgusted by it. But at the same time, he understood that he needed to look at it. He wanted to take a look at his own ugliness. And staring at it, he couldn't help but feel something squeeze within his chest. If all humans were born equal, why was he born so different from the others? What did he do to be born so different? Why was he born to hold such ugliness? Why couldn't he have been saved earlier? Why him of all people? How could all of it happen to him? Julian's chest burned as he felt the resentment slowly wash away from his chest. Staring at the figure before him as he lost himself in the resentment that once took hold of him, Julian became more and more aware of how ugly he had been his entire life. Now that clarity had finally reached him, he saw it all too clearly. Stop. Seeing him struggle with his resentment, Julian's lips trembled. He didn't want him to become like him. Now that his mind was clear, he wanted to get rid of the ugliness. Why? You need to stop. Julian forced the words past his lips, eyes fixed on the reflection before him. In that moment, he wasn't speaking to the entity that had taken over his body. No, he was talking to himself. The real Julian Dacre Evanes. The world is lonely. Julian took a step forward, prompting the reflection to step back. And no, I get that. We've always been alone. Julian's lips trembled, but as they did, they also curled. He was smiling now. For the first time, he could think without the voices in his head. He could think without the influence of his own darkness. It felt so free. He was free. In the face of his fading existence, rather than fear, Julian felt freedom. He felt liberated, as if a massive burden had been taken away from him. At the same time, he saw someone shouldering the burden that had long haunted his mind. But unlike him, this person didn't cling solely to resentment. There were other things holding him together, other threads keeping him balanced. Things that he was never able to get. That was why, despite feeling his existence slowly starting to fade, Julian still chose to remain as he stared at the struggling figure in front of him. Kill, 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 kill. He was hunched on the ground, his eyes slowly being consumed by madness. In that moment, Julian felt the figure turn into that of a child. To that, of him when he was young, when he was struggling all by himself to control the darkness. Unfortunately, there never existed someone to help him control that darkness. He had always been alone. The darkness grew as a result. If only there had been someone to just stick with him. To tell him that the world wasn't so lonely. To tell him that it was all okay. It's okay. Julian hunched over, wrapping his arms around the young figure and pulling him close to his chest. His lips trembled as he held tightly onto the child. As he felt his warmth. It must have been lonely, right? The world, everything. It must have been really lonely, right? Ha! Julian's chest trembled, his gaze drifting to the white world behind. He could feel his existence starting to fade. The darkness that previously consumed him had disappeared completely. For the first time, he was truly free. And, it's okay. Squeezing the little boy, he reassured. It's going to be okay. Julian's mind went blank moments later. In his final moments, the darkness dissipated entirely. In its place, a vibrant green emerged. A green so bright that it almost felt like it could pierce all darkness. For the first and last time in his life, Julian felt it. Joy. He touched it in his final moments. He reached it, in his freedom. Chapter 784, The State of the World 1. I didn't understand what happened. In one moment, I started to lose myself in the madness and the resentment, and in the next moment, I felt a soothing and comfortable sensation wash over my entire body, alleviating a lot of the darkness that I tried to consume. Lifting my head, I looked around, but there's nothing. I found that I was the only one standing within the white world. It was just me and the silence. Julian, he was gone. That was also the moment that I came to a sudden understanding. I see. So it was him. He was the reason for the sudden clearing of all the negative emotions. While I hadn't seen it or felt it, I was almost certain of it. Especially when I thought back to the little fragments of the past that I had managed to glimpse while I was in that state, it became clear to me. That was the moment I truly began to understand him. Julian was indeed a ball made out of darkness and resentment. At the same time, however, he was also a victim of the resentment and darkness. He had once been nothing more than an innocent child, slowly warped and consumed by the darkness. I knew better than anyone how terrifying and invasive the voices could be. I had nearly lost my own mind to them. Julian, on the other hand, lived with such voices in his head. It's no wonder he became who he was. Anyone would go mad when subjected to that. The more I thought about it, the more pity I felt for him. At the same time, however, I also understood that he no longer had to bear the weight of the voices or the resentment. I had taken most of it into myself, and my chest throbbed with every breath, the darkness inside making its presence unmistakably clear. It might take some time for me to fully digest everything, but this is a start. I can control it, and that's what's important. This was a massive boost to my emotive magic. While I was still at the 5th level of emotive magic, I could now clearly sense the path that stretched beyond it. The 6th level. Just what sort of absurd concept would the 6th level be? It's interesting. I could tell that it was going to be incredibly powerful. However, for now, there were other things that I needed to take care of. Staring around and finding no other soul in sight, it truly dawned on me that it was just me now. Julian was completely gone. From this moment forward, this body was going to be mine and mine alone. I was now the only soul within this body. Taking a deep breath, I closed my eyes, reaching inward to feel my connection with the body. It was there, faint but undeniable. The sword. When I opened my eyes again, my focus locked onto it, the world around me growing unbearably bright as a sharp pain tore through my chest. Hurk. Blood spurted from my mouth, the strong scent of smoke filling my nostrils and mixing with the sharp tang of iron as my chest rose and fell in uneven bursts. Looking down, I caught sight of a pair of shoes before slowly lifting my head, my gaze meeting a pair of cold gray eyes. The moment our eyes met, his gaze trembled. He didn't speak, but I understood immediately what he wanted. For just the briefest of moments, the world grew incredibly quiet. But then, I nodded. Why yes, I'm back. Leon's lips trembled, and his face grew slack. Thump. Falling to his knees, Leon let himself go from exhaustion as he grabbed the ground and tried his best to keep himself steady. In the meantime, the sword that was impaled in my body started to slowly move out before falling to the ground. Clank, clank, clank. The moment it did, the surroundings that had frozen in time suddenly started to move again as I felt an overwhelming sense of hatred directed in my direction. You, all-key, huh, what's going on? Seeing the state I was in, Leon's condition, and the sword behind me, the girls grew confused. I could understand their confusion. In one moment, Leon had impaled me with the sword, and in the next moment, he was on the floor before me. Time had frozen, and as such, the three were completely unaware of what had happened during that time. I leaned my neck a little and massaged it while looking at the three of them. You can stop your nonsense. I'm back. What are you talking about? Strong fluctuations rippled out from their bodies, each wave carrying an oppressive weight that pressed against my chest. They were powerful enough to make my stomach tighten and my breath pause, yet I forced myself to hold it together, meeting their gazes without flinching. I know none of you three are stupid. I'm sure you can tell that someone else has taken over my body. I'm back now. I looked at Evelyn for a brief moment before turning my attention towards Aoife. You of all people should be aware of this. After all, I did tell you all about this. Aoife's expression froze the moment her eyes landed on me. She was clearly caught off guard, her crimson hair, usually so fluid around her face, pulling back slightly as her power faltered. Why you, that? I ignored her and turned to Evelyn. I know you're incredibly observant. You should understand better than anyone that the one who took over wasn't me. It was the old Julian. Evelyn bit her lip, her expression betraying the thoughts she tried to hide. She clearly understood, yet a flicker of hesitation lingered in her eyes. I could tell that she was struggling to believe me. What if it's just a ruse? That could be. Her thoughts were almost as plain as day. I turned my attention towards Kira. She was the last person that I looked at, and the one that I had most trouble dealing with. Her crimson eyes shone within the darkness that surrounded her as I opened my mouth, ready to clear the confusion when. It's him. Leon's weak voice filled the air, his head slowly raising. That's Julian. He's back. I am sure of it. The surroundings fell silent shortly after his words as the girls alternated their gaze towards Leon and me. I could still see the hesitation in their expression, but slowly, I could also feel the fluctuations that lingered in the air starting to die down. I raised both of my hands when I saw that. If you want, we can all talk about it. I can clear up some of the confusion. I was in no state to fight them. While the mana inside my body was more than before, I was still mentally exhausted from everything that had happened. Everything felt unfamiliar to me. Though only an hour had passed for me using the third leaf, the same couldn't be said for this world. Time had moved on, and as I looked at Leon and the others, they appeared familiar, yet something about them felt strangely unfamiliar. It left a weird sensation inside my mind. Despite trying my best to adjust, it still felt weird. Just how much time had passed? All right. The silence was eventually shattered by Aoife as she lowered her hand and moved back onto the ground, her face still remaining cold as she looked at me. We can talk about this. I'd like to hear exactly what happened. Her eyes narrowed. Everything. For the briefest moment, her tone unsettled me. The way she spoke, the way she carried herself, it was nothing like before. She radiated the presence of a monarch now, her presence a lot more authoritative and serious. Glancing at Evelyn and Kira, I realized they had changed, too. A bitter smile formed on my lips as I nodded. Sure, I was also curious to hear from them. Just what had happened in the time that I was gone. Asterisk. The moment I agreed to talk with them, the girls' aggression eased. They remained extremely cautious, but with Leon walking beside me, they placed a measure of trust in him. The walk back was rather quiet. Nobody said a single word, the sound of our steps echoing within the surroundings. At some point, I was forced to change my appearance as an army appeared, guiding us toward a large tent. A large table stood in the middle of the room, and as everyone entered the tent and Aoife managed to cast a sound barrier around, all attention focused on me as Aoife sat at the head of the table, her arms crossed. Spit it. She didn't restrain her tone as she spoke. Explain to us what happened. Are you really the Julian that we know? If so, why did you only appear now? How can we trust you? Aoife pressed her hand over the table and leaned forward, her eyes narrowing as her tone remained cold. Make sure you don't leave anything out. I need something credible enough to be certain that something like this won't happen again. I don't know if you're truly Julian, but in the time that you've left, the world outside has gone to utter shit. Gone to shit. I pressed my lips together, alternating my gaze between everyone present, eventually facing Leon's gaze. Just one look in his direction, and I could see that he was also curious. They all wanted to hear exactly where I had been the entire time, and as I felt their gazes, I could only smile bitterly. So, would you believe me if I said that I was only gone for 10 minutes? The room fell silent, all expression pausing. I could see the atmosphere starting to change, Aoife's gaze slowly twisting alongside the others. Even Leon was looking at me with a strange look, and as I felt the situation starting to turn sour, I sighed. The last memories that I have are of my time at the engagement ceremony. The room turned completely silent, all noise stripping away from the place. Biting my lips, I stared at my hands. I am not someone who belongs in this era. Chapter 785. The State of the World 2. My existence was clouded with misunderstandings and lies. This much was clear to me. I had already somewhat come clean to Leon, Delilah, and Aoife. However, that wasn't enough. I knew that there was no longer a need for me to hide any longer. There was no point, and it was, in fact, just hurting me at this point. I am not someone who belongs in this era. The words flowed smoothly from my mouth. I didn't feel any relief when saying the words, nor did I feel a weight lifted from my chest. This just felt natural. I had now reached a point where I no longer cared to keep my secret a secret. But of course, I wasn't stupid enough to completely come clean in front of them. After all, Filled Diamond main quest activated, prevent the calamities from awakening or dying. Aoife K. Megrail, awakening, progress 80%. Kira Milna, awakening, progress 75%. Evelyn J. Verlice, awakening, progress 69%. Staring at the screen that appeared before me, I knew that I couldn't completely come clean before them. I expected that the first vision would depict what would happen once the meter reaches 100%, however, it's very clear that it's not the case at all. I felt grim at the realization. I had always worked around the quests to keep the meter to the lowest, in preparation for the first vision, but now that I understood what the first vision entailed, I realized that I had been misunderstanding the entire situation from the start. And at the same time, I started to feel lost. If the first vision didn't refer to the calamity meter, then what exactly was the calamity meter? Looking at the three of them in front of me, staring at me in confusion as they each mumbled things like, "What do you mean you don't belong to this era? What are you talking about? Why aren't you saying anything?" I held myself back from coming completely clean as I struggled to understand the meaning behind the calamity meter. If the meter wasn't related to the first vision, what was it related to? The outer beings. The thought made my heart pause as I looked at the three of them, and as I saw their confusion grow, I spoke. Have any of you experienced anything weird lately? What? Kira was the first one to speak, her brows furrowed extremely tightly as her crimson eyes locked with mine. Why are you suddenly asking a question like that after what you've just said? What do you mean by you're not from this era? Are you fucking around with us? I'm not. I cut Kira off, my expression as serious as it could be. I'm asking you because it's important. I settled my gaze on both Evelyn and Aoife. Have the two of you been experiencing anything weird lately? Or just anything in general? This is an important question that I need to ask in order to come clean to you guys. I need to understand something. The three of them frowned, their heads turning to look at each other. Their confusion was all too clear, and just when I thought I wouldn't get anywhere, Aoife spoke. I hear voices in my head. The room plunged into silence, all heads turning towards Aoife as she sat in her seat, eyes firmly locked in my direction. I've been hearing voices in my head for quite some time. I've been trying to ignore them, but they've been growing stronger with each passing year. Is this what you've wanted to hear? There was no change in her expression despite what she just revealed. I was taken aback by her honesty, and for a moment, I didn't know how to react. But just as if that wasn't enough, Aoife continued. The voices want me to kill you. A strange tension filled the room shortly after. One that I felt all too clearly as Aoife's gaze flickered over me. For a brief moment, it felt as though she might lunge forward and strike. My body tensed, and my hands pressed firmly against the wooden armrests of the chair. But then, wow, I've always known you were a crazy bitch, but not to this extent. Kira's voice disrupted the tension, her gaze alternating between the two of us before settling over to Aoife. You really hearing voices? Aoife's eyes narrowed as she stared at Kira. She didn't reply and just turned her attention back to me as she muttered, "Is this enough?" I nodded before looking at Kira. "You, me." Kira blinked her eyes, confused. But then, as if realizing what I was referring to, Kira shook her head. "No, I'm not as crazy as her. I don't hear any voices in my head." "You don't?" "No." I pinched the bottom of my chin, turning my attention towards Evelyn, who equally shook her head. "No, not me." So neither Kira nor Evelyn is experiencing the same thing that Aoife is. Is her problem related to her mental problems, or is there more to it? My head throbbed as I thought about the situation. Of course, things weren't going to be easy. Just when I thought that the situation was getting more complicated, Kira suddenly spoke again. "I don't hear voices, but, Her brows furrowed for a moment as she hesitated. In the end, however, she set her sights on me. "This whole situation, it feels like déjà vu. Like I've seen this happen before, somewhere in the past. Almost like a vision. I don't know, maybe I'm just losing it. And you called me crazy." "Oi." Kira's head snapped in Aoife's direction as she sat in her seat with her arms crossed, staring in Kira's direction with her brow raised. I ignored the two and looked at Evelyn. She shook her head again. "No, nothing. I really don't have anything." "I see." Evelyn's percentage was the lowest, so it was possible that she never took notice of it. At the same time, however, I started to think about the things that Aoife and Kira had both revealed to me. Neither was much, and it only served to add to the confusion, but they both provided useful information. I should take note of this for now and think more about it later. Turning my attention back towards them, I spoke up again. "I don't think any of you is crazy. In fact, there's a high chance that what you've experienced is real, and something is residing inside of your body." A tense silence followed my words as the three girls stopped. I could see the confusion in their eyes as they looked at me. I could also see the skepticism in their gazes, and knowing this, I finally came clean to them. "I said that I don't belong to this era, right? That's not a lie. I don't belong to this era. I belong to a far older era. One where, the seven unrecorded existed." Quote. By now, the silence in the room had grown heavy, almost suffocating, as the girls' expressions failed to mask their shock while they stared at me. But as if the shock wasn't enough, I added fuel to the fire. "I am one of those seven unrecorded. To be precise, I am Oricleus." If the silence a moment prior was suffocating, the current silence was different. It was smothering. The girls' eyes were wide, their mouths opening and closing repeatedly as they struggled to come to terms with my words. I could understand their reactions. Leon wasn't any different in the past. This was why I decided to give them a little bit of time to recover from the shock. Thankfully, it didn't take long for them to recover as Evelyn bit her lips, her voice the first one to drift across the room. Quote. "You're not joking, right?" "I'm not." I turned towards Leon, who had been present the entire time. He sat by his seat, his expression stern and cold as he looked back at Evelyn before nodding. "He's likely not lying." "Likely not lying. Are you?" "That's not important right now." I cut Kira off before she could go into her usual rant. I wanted to make my position clear with the girls in order to make sure that all misunderstandings were cleared, and that I'd have nothing that would cause me harm in the future. I am both Oricleus and not at the same time. Oricleus was me, but my memories of the time I was Oricleus are still unclear. I'm slowly regaining my memories, but the process is taking longer than I anticipated. Nevertheless, it is undeniable that I am him, and this is the reason why I asked all of you the previous question. I alternated my gaze between the three of them. Quote. "The three of you aren't normal. Although I don't know exactly what's going on with the three of you, I know that there's something that I need to be extremely careful with you three. That's why you shouldn't dismiss anything that you've noticed. Be it the voices or the strange visions you saw in the past. If you detect anything, it is best if you tell me anything and everything." Once again, the girls went quiet. I could see from their faces that they were struggling to come to terms with everything that I had revealed to them. I didn't blame them for their reactions. After all, their reactions were understandable. I would probably react the same, if not worse, if someone suddenly came to me and told me they were a god and that something was wrong with them. I'd even go as far as treating them as some sort of lunatic. This was why I didn't push any further after I said my piece. I waited for the three of them to slowly digest the information before speaking again. It was going to be a long talk. However, it was going to be a long and necessary talk. No more lies. No more misunderstandings. I could no longer afford to be indecisive. I knew better than anyone that from this moment forward, the true fight was going to start. For that, I wanted to start on a clean slate. One where I wouldn't have to worry about variables that I had allowed to grow. Chapter 786, The State of the World 3. A long silence carried on after my words. It was a silence that seemed to drag on for a long time as the girls processed everything that I had revealed to them. I let them be. There were a lot of things that I needed to process myself. At the same time, I also needed some time to properly recover from everything that had happened. I was mentally exhausted. I'm still struggling to come to terms with the fact that I'm in the future. Looking at the girls and Leon, they really had changed quite a bit since the last time that I had seen them. The difference wasn't huge, but there was an air of maturity in them that felt weird. It was almost as if they had all grown up without me. In some way, I almost felt left behind, but at the same time, I also understood that I was originally older than they. I sighed, closing my eyes. What sort of weird thoughts was I even having? While it was true that they had changed compared to how I knew them, they were still the same. I was probably being overly dramatic. Yeah, that's probably the case. Feeling that I had rested enough, I raised my head to look at everyone again. My expression turned serious as I looked at everyone. Has everyone had a chance to take in what I've said? I imagine some of you have questions, maybe even want proof of what I've shared, but I'd prefer to hold off on questions for now. There are a few things I'd like to ask you first. From the start, there was something that I had been dying to know. What in the world happened while I was gone? What was the current state of the world? Judging from their attire and the few words that they had spoken, it wasn't very great. My heart sank at the thought. If Cithras, it's bad, but not as bad as you're thinking, Leon said suddenly, as if he'd just read my mind. No, he had probably read it. That fucker. He was particularly good at doing things like that. It was both helpful and annoying. Leon continued. Unknown forces began to show up one after another after you were gone. Several large households fell as a result, including. Leon paused, and while he didn't say anything, I could tell what he was trying to say. Julian was the one who took care of that household. The entire main estate has burned down, and while Linus was able to mitigate a lot of the damage the household sustained, you still lost quite a few territories. It'll be difficult to gain them back. I nearly felt like throwing up. All my money. I had invested so much money and time in my estate. Especially Valemont, where I had set up a portal. That's right, the portal. That's destroyed. Quote. I brought my hand to my mouth, feeling the urge to vomit blood. Suddenly, all of the pity that I had once felt for Julian was gone. Instead, I felt an unbelievable amount of hatred. That fucker. I should have made sure he suffered in his last moments. Aside from that, several large households fell. Even one duchy. I pulled my attention towards Leon. Even one duchy. Which duchy? Leon suddenly turned quiet, and I felt a sudden premonition. No, don't tell me. The Rosenberg Duchy. What? I was so stunned that I didn't even have time to process it properly. I could only stare at Leon with a dumbfounded expression. At the same time, a creeping sense of worry began to settle in. Wait, if the Rosenberg Duchy fell then? It fell because the Chancellor wasn't present. Leon cut me off before I could continue, his tone lowering. She disappeared shortly after you disappeared, and nobody has heard from her since. If she had been present, I doubt the household would have fallen. Quote. Oh, I felt relief upon hearing that Delilah hadn't been present during the downfall of her household, but at the same time, I grew even more worried. Where in the world was she? Did something happen while she was trying to reach the zenith? What about the father-in-law? He's fine. He was taking care of matters with Central while this happened. That's also the reason why they were able to do so much damage. With the absence of both powerhouses, alongside the power of the people they were dealing with, their downfall was almost inevitable. Hiss. I drew a cold breath upon hearing the full story. I could only imagine the tragedy that must have happened that day. I felt sick just thinking about it, but as if that wasn't enough. Leon continued. That's just the start. Although he said the situation wasn't as bad as I had expected it to be, to me, it was far worse than I had expected. The Megrail family was the next one to be affected, with several members defecting into the inverted sky. Thankfully, and almost strangely, John, Aoife's brother, didn't defect and started to fight with the newly emerged force. This resulted in a serious war between the members. That's when something became clear to me. Besides the inverted sky, there's another force at play. I felt a headache while thinking about everything that had occurred. It was one bad news after another. The Nurs Ansifa Empire wasn't the only affected empire. All other empires, including the Kasha, had been affected by the external forces showing up from the dark. The situation was serious all around. But if that wasn't bad enough, the cracks have started to destabilize. The number of monsters coming out of each gate is increasing. That's taking a lot of the manpower. The more I listened, the grimmer the situation became in my eyes. These guys. My ass, it isn't too bad. This was beyond horrible. The fact that they were even talking to me was a crime. They should have all been at the Empire, helping. I couldn't help but rub the top of my forehead, trying to calm my rising headache. Practically the entire world had changed, and in a good way. I'm not sure what Sithras is thinking by doing this, but I believe he's doing it to raise his faith. The greater faith one had, the greater their power with the Source. I knew that I needed to think more about that, but given my current reputation, I was the last person who would be able to do that. Thankfully, nobody knows I'm Oracleus besides the people in this room and Delilah. A voice suddenly brought me out of my thoughts as I raised my head to look up. Everyone's attention was fixed on me as I had lost myself in my own thoughts. Right, I was just trying to process the situation. There's a lot that happened while I was gone. Tell me about it, Kira smirked while looking at Leon. He's also suffered quite a bit. The situation is quite messed up in the other empires, too. You can say that it's worse than ours. Really? I turned to look at Leon, who grimly nodded his head. There have been multiple factions rising up. Amael is trying his best to fight for the throne, but the competition is tough. The situation is calm for now, but it's not great. The only empire that is doing moderately well is the Etheria Empire. Etheria, that's Keys's empire. Leon's face suddenly turned strange the moment I mentioned Keys. And just as I frowned, wondering why he reacted like that, Leon spoke. He's the current emperor. Quote. Question mark exclamation mark quote. I nearly spat out from the shock as I looked at Leon. What did he just say? I didn't hear wrong, did? I've tried contacting him, but he's unreachable. I don't exactly know how it happened, but he killed the previous emperor and took over. The situation over there is calm, but I have a feeling there's something deep there. I've been trying to investigate, but there were too many things that I had to take care of. Leon gave me a meaningful look, and I smiled bitterly. Right, despite trying my best to remain calm, I was still struggling to comprehend the information. Keys the Emperor. I found that hard to believe, especially when thinking about his situation just not too long ago. Did he somehow succeed in whatever he was investigating? But I'm not sure. If he did, he would have contacted Leon and the others. The situation felt strange for certain. I couldn't deny the possibility that the current, Keys, wasn't exactly the same one that I knew and could have possibly been controlled by someone else. I hoped that wasn't the case, but I didn't have many hopes. It gets more and more annoying the more I think about it. What are you going to do from this point forward? Are you going to look for Keys and see what he's up to? That would be quite helpful. At Aoife's sudden question, I paused for a moment while staring at her. Right, that's a good idea. The situation was clearly out of control, and it wouldn't hurt to check. But, no, I shook my head, prompting Leon and the others to look at me in surprise. Then what are? I think I'll stay here in the mirror dimension. I was currently a wanted fugitive in the outside world, and not only that, but there was also a chance that Atlas or someone else had figured out that I wasn't the real Julian. There are a few things that I need to take care of. I also believe that Delilah is somewhere here. If I can bring her back, I'm sure I can turn the situation around. I had a strong feeling that Delilah was in the mirror dimension. She was most likely looking for the other gods. The more I thought about it, the heavier my heart became, but I knew that I had to find her. Her strength was invaluable for the current stability of the outer world. But not only that, Noel. I wanted to figure out where Noel was. How was he doing? Chapter 787, The State of the World 4. I took a long breath, staring at the world outside. The scorching white sun still hung over the gray sky, while the subtle yet familiar heat radiated from above. I looked around me. towards the broken buildings and the soldiers that appeared around. I looked at their gleaming silver armors, their polished plates reflecting the glaring white sun as they stood under the heat with their backs straight. Everything felt so familiar and yet so strange. I stared at my owl hands, squeezing them a couple of times. There was no lag in my movements, and I could feel that I was now the only soul inside this body. I'm glad I didn't lose my memories after using the blood again. It had been one of my greatest worries when doing all of this, but it was also true that I had prepared for it as I turned my head to face the right. A certain figure had appeared beside me before I knew it. Quote. He stood in silence, his clothes quietly fluttering under the hot breeze of the mirror dimension. His gray eyes focused towards the distance for a short while until he turned his attention back towards me. The moment he did, it almost felt as though the surroundings paused. I stared back at him, and a few words slipped past my mouth before I knew it. You look exhausted. He truly did. Not only did he have glaring dark circles beneath his eyes, but his face was unusually pale. He seemed to have gone through a lot while I was gone. I am, Leon answered after a moment's pause, his gray eyes turning slightly hazy as he turned his attention towards the distance once more. I'm really tired, he mumbles, causing my heart to squeeze. I knew that I was partially responsible for his tiredness. No, I'm very much the reason why he's so tired. I really owed him quite a lot. I didn't need to read his thoughts to know he was beyond tired. I wanted to rest too, but I couldn't afford to do that. There were a lot of things that I needed to do. Are you really going to leave so soon? Leon asked, as if understanding my thoughts. His voice was soft, but the tiredness was even more clear than before. I nodded, pressing my hand over his shoulder and using my emotive magic to calm his mind. I could at least do this much. Yes, I'll probably leave soon. Based on what you've told me, 3 years have passed since I disappeared. That's a lot of time. There's so much that I need to do in the meantime. A lot of things had changed, and the world almost felt foreign to me. No, not just the world. My body too. I don't know what to think about the current state of my body. I could tell that I had reached the 8th tier, and that Julian had managed to shatter one of the domains and agglomerate it with the real world. However, I could also feel my emotive domain. It was still present, and I had a feeling that I could also integrate it with the real world. To some extent, it felt as though I was half a step into the 8th tier. I could officially be recognized as an 8th-tier mage, but at the same time, I had no real control over the agglomerated domain. At least, not as much as my emotive domain. I feel like I will have a large boost in my power if I manage to increase and agglomerate my own domain. I wasn't quite sure about my age, but if my estimates were correct, I was most likely around 24 to 25 years old. My current pace of progress was in line with Delilah's. However, it would still take years before I caught up to her. Right, for now, let's just focus on agglomerating my current domain. Everything else was secondary. I had already come up with a concept for it in the past, but with everything that had happened, I'd have to start again from scratch. It was originally supposed to be something that I did with my combined domains, but things were now a little bit more difficult. This is really troublesome. It was still doable, but just a lot more annoying. I hated annoying things. Shifting my thoughts back to Leon, who had remained quiet since I had last spoken, I opened my mouth to speak. What about you? Are you going to remain here or go back to your empire? I heard that the situation there wasn't good. It might be. They can take care of themselves without any problem. Leon cut me off, his voice almost a whisper. He looked a little bit better than before as he turned his attention towards the ground beneath him. In fact, you can even say that my presence might make things more difficult for them. Oh, I didn't really understand what he meant by this, but I pretended to understand. The main reason why the Empire is in such turmoil is because of my presence. There have been several assassins coming for me lately, so I've only made things more difficult for my family. Staying low and quiet is the best thing I can do while I wait for Amael to accumulate his power and seize the throne. Oh, I had been thinking about this for a while, but Leon really had no thirst for power. Despite the perfect opportunity presenting itself to him, he didn't think for 1 second about battling it for the throne. I was almost certain that Amael would even give it to Leon if he wanted it. I guess he really doesn't care much about power. It really did fit Leon's character a lot. Then are you going to stay here to help Ifas and the others to take control? No, Leon cut me off again, his attention shifting back to me as the corner of his lips pulled into a thin smile. I'll be coming with you. Quote. There were a lot of things that I expected Leon to say, and this wasn't one of them. He wants to come with me. After everything he had gone through. I almost thought of him as a fool, but then again, thinking about how Leon was, this made sense. He really was a fool. And somehow, I couldn't help but smile upon hearing his words. I take it that you're still not tired of being my knight. No, I am. The smile quickly wiped off from my face. I'm really tired. I think I deserve a raise. Give me a raise. This guy. Absolutely not. Trash bastard. Give me my damn raise. Tross, what did you just say? That's not how. You should talk to your employer. You're fired. You've long stopped paying me. Huh, really? Yes. I blinked my eyes slowly. Thinking about it, that might really be the case. I hadn't been present for 3 years. I used to pay his salary. Well, Noel did. It looked like Linus never paid him. Wait, there's a lot of back pay. I started to shiver, taking a step back while looking at Leon. My eyes unconsciously narrowed. How much are we talking about? I somehow didn't want to hear the number. Taking into consideration how the pay is based on the strength of the knight, alongside the things that I did for you over the past 3 years, I'd say. Let me stop you right there. Somehow, I didn't want to hear the number. It felt as though I'd get a heart attack if I did. 50 mil. It's a good day today, isn't it? Quote. The sky is gray. Yeah, a good day for the mirror dimension. Quote. Leon's eyes narrowed, his expression seemingly about to say, you changed the topic to avoid hearing how much you owe me, right? I averted my gaze away from him. This delusional fucker. I'd never do something like that. I was a good and honest. Here, Leon casually tossed me a certain item as I caught it. Turning my attention towards it, I stopped before looking back at Leon. I've kept it well. You can have it back. Right. I looked at the small tube in my hand and clenched it tightly. Within it was my blood. It was an amount that I had extracted in the past and had given to Leon to keep. This was also the main reason why I had been able to keep my memories despite using Noel's body to restore the body. While there still was a lot of my old blood inside of this body, the amount was a lot lower due to me extracting a bit in the past. Opening the cork, I chugged the blood into my body as the veins inside of my body started to throb and churn. I closed my eyes and relished in the sensation before opening my eyes again. There was no clear change after drinking the blood, but I felt a lot more clear-headed than before. I also felt a small sting coming from my right forearm. Not bad. With this, I should be in top shape. I felt very good. Looking back at Leon, I was just about to speak when a certain voice cut me off. Are you two done talking? I turned my attention towards the source of the voice, spotting Aoife, Kira and Evelyn walking in my direction, each of them looking more refreshed as they wore brand new armors. Looking at them, it almost felt as though they were getting ready to go on a long trip. Quote. I wonder where they're going. I was curious, but I didn't ask much. We're more or less done. Yeah, Leon nodded, pressing his forehead and squinting his eyes. I'm feeling a little tired, but it should be enough to move. You want to move now? I looked at Leon in surprise. I was fine with going now, but Leon looked like he'd stumble over at any second. This didn't feel like a great idea. Now, well, that works well too, I guess. Overhearing Aoife's mutter, I turned my head in her direction. What did she just say? I suddenly had a bad premonition. I'm also feeling pretty good. I'm good to go. Yeah, licking my lips, I alternated my gaze between the three of them. Haha, a nervous laugh escaped my lips at the same time. Where are the three of you going? All three girls stopped while looking at them. Then, staring at me with an expression that seemed to say, isn't it obvious, I felt my heart sink. With you, no. Chapter 788. A Reunion 1. Splash. Crimson waves lapped against the side of the dock, scattering droplets of red across the worn planks as boats drifted in and eased themselves alongside the pier. Get the merchandise out. Make sure that nothing goes wrong with it. There's a lot of precious material inside. Hey, be careful. Varelith was as lively as ever. Merchants filled the streets, some docking their ships and unloading goods brought from distant lands beyond the remnant south. At this very moment, stop for a moment, a voice drifted through the air. It wasn't loud, yet it slipped effortlessly into the ears of every merchant present, stopping them in their tracks. Soon, every head turned toward the main bazaar connected to the port, where several figures dressed in white emerged from the crowd. All noise stripped from the surroundings, all eyes focused on the envoys of the Goddess of Light. At the helm stood a young man dressed in a white uniform. The instant he appeared, a heavy tension swept through the surroundings, pressing down on everyone present. His cold gaze swept the surroundings before falling on a couple of crates. Beside the crates stood several individuals, their expressions tense as they glanced at the man, fumbling to strike up a conversation. "Yes, sir, Collector. Is there anything we can help you with?" He stood motionless, his light brown hair stirring faintly in the air, a silver mask gleaming under the pale sunlight. Then, without a word, he turned to the envoys behind him and gestured toward the box. "Check the contents of the crate." Wait, sir, hold on, you can't do this." The merchants immediately tried to protest, but the collector didn't care as he coldly maintained his gaze over the crates. "No, wait." Despite the merchants' protests and the curious stares from those nearby, the collector remained completely indifferent. "Keep checking. Ignore them." The envoys obeyed the collector's command, moving toward the crates and opening them. Inside were rows of candles, their scent wafting through the air and filling the surroundings with a pleasant fragrance. Candles. There's more candles here. The candles came in a variety of colors, each carrying its own distinct yet pleasant fragrance. The envoys continued their search, but every crate was filled with candles. In total, there were 16 crates, each containing the same batches of candles. "Sir, this is all. There's only candles." When the envoys reported the situation to the collector, his expression remained unchanged. He stared at the candles, and then at the merchant who seemed to have picked up some courage. "See, what did I tell you? There's nothing here. They're all candles that I'm trying to sell. Are you going to reimburse me for the damages?" The merchant deliberately raised his voice, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Despite this, the collector's face remained the same. He gave the merchant a steady look before turning his attention towards the candles and picking one up. "What are you doing? Why are you touching the candles? I'm telling you, you've already damaged the goods enough. You'd better stop before I make the situation worse." Ignoring the merchant, the collector brought the candle closer to his nose and inhaled deeply. His eyes closed, and a moment later, his expression softened. When he opened them again, they were slightly bloodshot. "Take him in." His order was absolute. The moment the words left his mouth, the envoys picked the merchant up and brought him away. "What? You can't do this to me. I'm innocent. I'm telling you that I'm innocent." Despite his cries, nobody reacted. All eyes remained fixed on the collector as he picked up another candle and turned his attention towards a certain envoy. The envoy stepped forward and extended his hand, a faint red magic circle forming. A flame burst out not long after. Placing the candle on top of the fire, it started to melt. Immediately, the collector placed a ceramic pot beneath, collecting all of the wax. Drip, drip. The process was a slow one. The wax melted relatively slowly, but the collector remained patient, alongside the envoy, as more and more of the wax liquefied. It took 10 minutes for the entire candle to melt under the heat of the flame. As a large pool of wax gathered in the pot, the collector studied it intently before placing his hand over it. The golden ring on his finger glowed a moment later, and the wax started to stir. Bubble, bubble, bubbles began to form shortly after, the wax churning as if it were boiling. Some of it splashed onto the collector's hand, yet he remained completely unfazed, his eyes fixed unwaveringly on the wax. And then, there, quote ellipsis exclamation mark question mark quote. Collector. A black liquid began to bubble upwards, its appearance immediately chilling the atmosphere. The collector quickly stopped whatever he was doing, pulling his hand away as the flame also stopped. Putting the pot away, the collector turned his attention towards the envoys. "You know what to do. Collect everything and send it over to the church." "Understood. Yes, sir." Satisfied, the collector shifted his attention elsewhere and began to move. His steps were slow, his posture perfectly straight. As he walked down the city streets, those around him lowered their heads at his presence, a silent pressure radiating from him as he turned the corner. The cobblestone streets grew more faded, and the surrounding buildings appeared increasingly worn and gloomy. Signs hung crookedly, and as he stepped over a pool of water that distorted the neon-colored signboards reflected within it, the collector paused before a weathered wooden door. Glancing around to make sure no one was watching, he removed the silver mask from his face and stripped off his outer garments. With a quiet breath, he pushed the wooden door open, revealing a run-down pub dimly lit by flickering lights, where only a handful of weary patrons lingered. He scanned the surroundings before eventually moving towards a certain table and sitting down. "Would you like anything?" A burly man appeared before him not long after. Raising his head, the young man glanced at the man before mumbling, "The same." "All right." The burly man left shortly after. For a brief moment, the entire pub fell into silence. But it didn't last. The quiet was soon broken by the subtle scrape of a chair against the floor, cutting through the still air like a whisper. A figure sat opposite the collector as he kept his head lowered. The silence returned, but not for long. "Stop acting so mysterious. It's pissing me off. Look at me, or I'll toss this cup over your head." A bitter smile formed on the collector's face as he raised his head to look at the woman sitting before him, holding onto an empty glass cup while she crossed her legs and leaned back against the wooden chair. "You're finally looking at me." Yes. Anas could only look at the woman in front of him with resignation. Despite having reached the rank of a collector and being hailed as one of the most promising members of the Church of the Goddess of Light, he was still nothing compared to the woman in front of him. "What? Looking at your face, it seems like you have a problem." "Do you have a problem?" "No, I don't." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." The woman smirked. "That's good to hear." She placed the cup down, her expression softening slightly. It didn't last long, however, as she reached into her pocket and pulled something out, placing it on the table. Clank. The faint sound of metal against wood echoed through the quiet pub as Anas's eyes shifted toward it. His expression immediately turned serious. It's something I found recently. Word is, it's been spreading fast among pirates and across nearby cities. They say that if you try it, your strength will increase. It seems like some sort of drug. I've yet to try it, but from what I've gathered, there doesn't seem to be any side effects. For now. Anas reached for the metal box on the table and pulled out a small black pill. At first glance, it seemed ordinary, just a simple, unremarkable pill, but his sharp eyes detected that something was off about it. "It feels similar to what I found within the candles. This can't be a coincidence." Lately, things had felt unusually off. Strange objects and pills had begun appearing throughout the city and across the entire mirror dimension. The fragile order that had once held everything together was starting to crack, and the main church had issued a decree to halt any distribution of such items. "Do you have any idea as to what this is?" "No, I'm not entirely sure." Anas shook his head. "Even you don't know? I thought you were a collector." "I am." "Then why are you so useless?" Quote. Anas was left speechless. "What do you mean by useless?" He was a damn collector. One of the highest possible ranks within the entire church, only below those in the seat of Solas. Still, he only complained in his heart. He didn't have the balls to complain outwardly. Coughing dryly, he got on with the conversation. "My clearance level isn't high enough to access that information. Right now, my job is simply to locate and investigate anything containing this type of material. Just a moment ago, I came across a batch of candles infused with it. I was able to detect the content within thanks to the ring that I've received from the church." Anas showed the ring on his finger. Anna's brow rose at the sight, but she didn't say anything. "If anything, tisk." She clicked her tongue, prompting Anas to flinch. He coughed again, trying to change the conversation again, feeling cold sweat pouring down his back. "This is the current situation. We're trying to locate the distributors, but we've found nothing as of yet. They're hiding quite deeply, and the seats are starting to become impatient. They might make a move themselves soon. That would be quite problematic." Anne mumbled, switching her crossed legs. "If they do start making a move, that would mean the sea will likely be taken over for a bit. That would be less than ideal for me." "I know." Anna sighed, feeling her head throb at the sudden piece of news. If the sea were really shut down, then she'd have to start making some plans regarding what she'd have to do. Should she just lie low for a bit? She groaned, turning her attention towards Anas, her gaze falling on his hand. If only this bastard. Clank. Suddenly, the door of the pub opened and all heads turned in unison. Several figures appeared not long after, and the moment Anne's head turned, she felt every hair on her body stand on end. Especially when she caught sight of the leading figure, feeling the enormous pressure coming from within his body. Dangerous. Before she even had the chance to react, however, the man in question turned his attention towards them. Time seemed to slow down in that moment. And then, "I've finally found you." Chapter 789. A Reunion 2. "Tell me why we're headed over here. We've been traveling for quite some time. Don't you have a dragon? Why can't we use your dragon? I'm sure we would have arrived way faster." Nag, 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 nag. That was all I heard throughout the entire journey to the remnant south. It was just an endless amount of nagging coming from Leon, Aoife, Kira, and Evelyn. The four of them just nagged the entire time. It was to the point where I just felt like leaving them and running away. Thankfully for them, I had the patience of a saint. I just smiled and ignored all of them. I can't believe they followed me. The one I was most surprised about was Aoife. She was supposed to be the princess of an empire. The competition for the throne was also at its climax. I didn't think that her coming with me was the best decision. Despite this, she still insisted on coming, saying things like, "My presence isn't required for now. Most of my people can handle most of the stuff for the time that I'll be gone. If anything does happen, I can always receive messages from them." What do you think of the royal family? Do you think we don't have stuff that can't communicate such far distances? Oh, I just accepted her explanation and didn't ask any further. At the end of the day, given her current strength, I believed that she would be of help. First order of business, I need to find an Oz. The goal was to reach out to Panthea. I knew that it wouldn't be as simple as the last time that I did so. I tried going to the church, but the doors were closed, and everyone who tried to get in was kicked out shortly after. In the end, the best method was just to get in contact with an Oz. Thankfully, the task wasn't very hard for me. Thanks to Mana Sense, I was able to track him down rather easily. This should be the place. It looked like a rundown pub, and as I pushed the door open, I was immediately met with several dozen gazes. All of which weren't friendly. I paid them no mind, sweeping my eyes across the entire room before settling my attention towards a couple of figures. The moment I caught sight of them, a smile formed on my face. It's been a while. Unfortunately, it seemed like I was the only one happy to see them. The moment Anne caught sight of me, her entire expression changed as she stood up and tensed. A certain pressure started to form in her body. Oh, shit, I could tell almost immediately that she was extremely wary of me. Thinking about it, I had an entirely different face compared to the past. I was neither looking like Julian nor Lazarus. I had done this because Lazarus had a certain level of fame, but it was clearly backfiring on me, as Anne didn't waste a second and immediately took out her whip and whipped in my direction. Gotcha! The air trembled. Staring at the incoming attack, I didn't panic. Instead, a figure stepped out from behind me, bringing their hand forward. Bang! The whip directly struck Leon's arm, causing his expression to contort a little. Nevertheless, he withstood the attack and grabbed hold of the whip. Before the situation could escalate further, I spoke. Relax. We're not your enemies. Rather, I turned my attention towards Anaz, suddenly smiling. As if sensing something, Anis's eyes widened, and I tapped onto my face, morphing it into an old face that I had. Quote ellipsis dot exclamation mark question mark quote. Quote ellipsis exclamation mark quote. Finally, Anaz and Anne showed a reaction to my appearance, their eyes widening in shock. I know my face is a little different compared to the past, but I'm shocked neither of you could recognize me instantly. We did spend a couple of months together, after all. I extended both of my hands, expecting the two of them to come rushing to me and hug me. But, wow, you really did come back. Took you long enough. Neither of the two moved closer to me, staying in place. I alternated my gaze between the two before lowering my hands. What sort of reaction was this? Where was the, "I missed you so much"? Where have you been? Why was their reaction so lukewarm? Nobody likes you. A certain voice whispered next to me shortly after, prompting my head to turn. However, all I was met with was a stoic-looking Leon as he stared ahead without any expression. What did you say? Leon looked at me, his head tilting innocently. What's wrong? Why are you looking at me like that? Didn't you just? You must be imagining things. No, I'm not. You are. No. Yes. I gritted my teeth, cursing Leon in all sorts of imaginable ways. However, I decided to let go of it for now as I once again focused my attention on Anaz and Anne. Looking around and seeing how everyone in the place was staring at us warily, I pointed towards the door of the place. Should we go out? There's a certain favor that I need to ask of the two of you. Quote ellipsis dot dot quote. Quote ellipsis dot dot quote. Anaz and Anne didn't say anything, merely exchanging glances with one another. In the end, however, they both nodded their heads and followed me out. I know a place where we can talk. Just as I was about to leave, however, I stopped and looked back at them. I'm curious about something. Yes. How did you guys know it was me? What if I'm impersonating Lazarus? Oh, so that's your question. They both looked at me as if I were stupid. Still, I couldn't understand their reaction at all. In the end, it was Anne who smiled while looking at me. It's a trade secret. Yup, secret. Anaz nodded along, walking out with her. Huh, what does that mean? Hey, I quickly chased after them. The moment we went out, Anaz proceeded to lead me towards a different area. I tried to get them to answer, but neither of the two did, just saying things like, we just know. Maybe one day. It was really bugging me, but I soon gave up. Whatever, I'll get my answer sooner or later. Varelith was a sprawling city, home to a large population and naturally divided into distinct districts, from the wealthiest quarters to the poorest. In the richer areas, the cobblestone streets were clean and orderly, the buildings well maintained, and the infrastructure retained a refined aesthetic, far removed from the gloomy, Gothic tones that dominated the poorer districts. Stopping in one such house, I looked up. Is this your place? The house was white in color, containing several floors and even a garden. It wasn't anything grand like I had seen in the world outside, but this was still an impressive sight for something in the mirror dimension. It is. A lot of things have changed since we last saw each other. I can see. I had noticed the difference from the moment I caught sight of him. Anas's features looked to have matured a little compared to the past, but that wasn't the biggest change. The biggest change was his demeanor. It seemed a lot clearer and refined compared to the past. He's certainly grown a lot. I felt gratified seeing him like this. But if there was one person that didn't change at all, you opening the door, or I am. Anne was the same in every way. She looked the same, and her attitude was also the same. I could also see the exasperation in Anas's eyes as he looked at her. At the same time, however, I could also see and feel the love that he felt for her. I guess I'm starting to get better at perceiving someone's emotions. The more I immersed myself in the path of emotions, the more I started to understand them. I had reached a point where I didn't need to activate the 5th level of emotive magic to see someone's emotions. I could now feel them with a single glance. Come in. Do any of you need tea or something to drink? Anaz finally addressed the others behind me. He was confused at the sight of them, but I offered him no explanation and just entered the apartment. His home was quite orderly, with the furniture being rather clean, and the place dominated by the color white. Large windows stood in the living room, allowing one to catch a glimpse of the sea in the distance. I made myself comfortable, sitting down in one of the sofas as the others followed suit. Because they were unfamiliar with Anne and Anaz, they didn't speak much. It's probably better this way. Anyways, you said that you needed something. How can I help you with? Anaz sat on the sofa opposite me and looked at me with a clear expression. Staring at him and then Anne, the first thing I did was cast the illusion off. The moment I did, my true appearance was revealed to the two of them. Quote. The two didn't react immediately. They just looked confused. However, they were both quick to pick up what was happening as their eyes widened. In particular, Anne. Holy shit, her first reaction was to curse. And then, no, this makes no sense. There's just no way. I can tell that you're currently just as strong as I am. You were weaker than me before, and, what the fuck? How can you be so young? I smiled upon seeing her reaction. The situation turned even funnier when Anaz reacted. Wait, he alternated his gaze between me and her. Are you saying that this is his true face? No shit. Wait, but he looks younger than me. That's because I probably am. I'm about 25 right now. Quote. Exclamation mark question mark quote. Quote. Exclamation mark quote. Both of their faces turned ghostly pale, the shock from the sudden revelation hitting them hard. I really felt like laughing, but held myself back. It was really nice seeing them again. Either way, there were more important matters that I needed to take care of. Wait, are you serious? You're younger than me, but why did you tell me to grow up? Well, wait, you told him to grow up. A certain voice chimed in. When I turned my head, I saw Kira and the others looking at me weirdly. Oh god, he did. Anaz looked at them. He told me that I needed to grow up because I never did. He made a whole speech and stuff too. I believed him because he looked older than and more experienced than me, but he's actually younger than me. I don't know. Anas's face turned complex. I was just about to say something when Kira spoke. Oh, so that's what happened. Don't worry, that's nothing strange. Julian has basically done it for all of us. He likes to pretend to be a therapist from time to time. Quote. That's, I couldn't even argue against her. That being said, although he likes to meddle a lot and speaks a lot of nonsense, as much as I hate to say it, he always tends to be right. Kira shrugged her shoulders, giving me a small glance. Despite the way he looks, he cares. He probably said the things that he said to help you, and looking at how you're currently doing, I can see that his words have helped you. Quote ellipsis dot quote. Anaz didn't say a word after that. His expression relaxed a little, and he even laughed. You're right. The way he looked at me seemed more relaxed. Yeah, you're right. Age is just a number. In the end, he really did help me. Staring at Anaz, and then at Kira, I started to shudder. Turning my attention towards Leon and seeing him react the same, I held both of my arms. He did the same. What was this cringe? Make it stop. Chapter 790. A Reunion 3. Enough of that. I clapped my hands once and stopped whatever was going on. Immediately, all attention focused on me once more as I shifted my focus onto Anaz. Quote dot dot dot. I'll get straight to the point. I need you to help me reach out to the goddess. I need to speak to her. What? Anas's expression changed subtly. The same was for Anne as they both looked at me in shock and confusion. You want to meet with the goddess? Why? There's something that I need to ask her. I didn't elaborate any further, but the two seemed to understand what I meant as they exchanged a brief glance. Eventually, Anas's expression shifted, a complicated look spreading across his face. Had you asked me a while back, I could have probably have done something, but the situation right now is a little bit tough. The entire church has been shut down, and those from the seat of Solas are hard to reach. Is something happening? Yes. Anaz didn't hold back any information. He informed me of everything that he knew. Or perhaps, he informed me of everything that he was allowed to share. But it was good enough. There's been a strange substance spreading throughout the region. It helps people gain strength, but at the same time, it drives them mad. I don't know much about it, since only those from the seat of Solas seem to have a clear grasp of the situation, but from what I've heard, it's not just happening here. The same thing is occurring in other territories as well. We're starting to lose control, and because of that, it's become nearly impossible for me to meet with the current living saint or anyone from the seat of Solas. The more I listened to Anas's words, the more I frowned. This situation was becoming less and less ideal. What is the substance that he's talking about? Why is it spreading? Other territories, too. Is this done by a god or something else? My curiosity got the better of me, and I was just about to ask for more details about the strange substance when Anaz reached out and placed a small glass bottle and a candle on the table. Here, he pushed the items my way. These are the items that I've just recently managed to get my hands on. Check them out and see. Curious, I picked up the bottle and examined its contents, but the instant my fingers brushed against the glass, a searing heat coursed through my veins. My blood seemed to boil, and a sharp wave of realization struck me almost immediately. I opened my mouth, examining the bottle closely. This is the blood of. The words faded from my mouth the moment I was about to speak them, my eyes widening as a result. I tried again, but the result was no different. The blood of what? Spit it out. Why aren't you finishing your sentence? I could clearly see the frustration etched across the faces of everyone in the room as their eyes settled on me. Their expressions said more than words ever could, and seeing them, all I could do was offer a bitter smile. Thankfully, Leon was there to cover for me. Something is blocking him from saying the words. That's a thing. Without saying a word, I simply nodded and set the bottle back on the table before reaching for the candle. The moment my fingers brushed against it, the same sensation coursed through me. My blood roared as though set ablaze. Grimacing faintly, I placed the candle down once more. This is a lot more troublesome than I expected. It also raised a lot of questions. Why was the blood being distributed? What was causing this? Were the outer beings finally making a move? Is this also the reason why Panthea isn't making a move? Just what in the world is going on? The more I thought about the situation, the stranger it felt to me. I take it that you have some sort of idea as to what this strange substance is, but you're not allowed to say it. Looking back at Anaz, and then Anne, I opened my mouth but ultimately closed it before nodding. I was indeed not allowed to talk about. Not because I didn't want to, but because I couldn't. I see. Anaz leaned back against his seat, his gaze lingered on the items laid out on the table, his expression unreadable, as though he were trying to piece together something only he could see. Eventually, he looked back at me. Since you already seem to have some understanding of what's going on, it would be best if you could speak with the goddess directly. Unfortunately, I wasn't lying when I said I can't arrange a meeting with her. Still, Anas paused for a moment, his tone evening out a little bit. It's not entirely impossible for me to help you meet someone from the seat of Solace. You can. My eyes lit up. I just needed to reach someone with enough clearance to contact the goddess directly. As long as she became aware of my presence, I was confident I could secure a meeting with her. I'm sure she knows something about Noel. Given how he had saved her life in the past, I don't think their relationship is bad. There's no way the two would have worked together if their relationship was horrible. Haha, maybe the two of them even have a special relationship. I almost laughed at the thought. I couldn't think of Noel ever getting with anyone, but then, thinking about Julian's mother, I felt my expression twitch. Surely, let me see if I can arrange something. There's an important meeting between the seats soon. I can try to see if I can get a spot there. Standing up, Anas took out a strange device and left the room shortly after. I stared at his parting back before turning towards Anne. She was staring at me and then everyone else in the room. You guys, we're all the same age. Her face deflated as she similarly stood up, mumbling things like, kids these days are scary. I can't believe they're all this strong when they're so young. What did their families feed them? She left the room shortly after. What followed after her departure was a brief moment of silence. One that was inevitably broken by Kira as she looked at me. How did you meet these people, exactly? I'm also a little bit curious. Evelyn chimed in. Turning my head and seeing Leon and Aoife also looking at me, I gave them a brief explanation. It was during the time when I was in the mirror dimension, when I technically died. Oh, right, the moment you went ahead and died, and appeared again. That makes sense. I noticed hints of sarcasm in Kira's tone. Aoife joined from the side. Right, it's not like that's strange or anything. We should already be used to Julian leaving, just like how he left for 3 whole years. Quote. I didn't actually leave. Did you meet anyone in the 3 years you were gone? I looked at Leon. His face scrunched up as he looked at me. He probably didn't. Looks like they were all still holding a grudge. I sighed. Fine, I'll accept it. While it wasn't my fault, and it had to be done, I could still see why they were angry. The entire world had shifted considerably since my departure, and a lot of things had happened as a result of Julian's actions. With that being said, I wasn't actually gone for very long. I was only gone for like a day. Alright, it can be done. Anas's voice cut through mine as he entered the room once more, holding onto a strange device. He looked around the room before settling his gaze on me. Quote. There's going to be a gathering soon between the seats of Solace. While I can't promise you I can get you a meeting with them, I can get you to attend the gathering. Whatever happens from that point will be up to you. Is that okay? I looked at Anas and stood up from my seat. That'll do. All I needed was a meeting. That was all I needed. Quote. It appears that Julian has been dealt with. A soft voice whispered within a soft chamber where a man appeared. He sat with his legs crossed, his entire body humming in the silence as a faint glow enveloped his body. Elizabeth stood a couple of steps from him as she reported the entire situation to him. He disappeared shortly after the forces from the Megrail family surrounded him. We've tried getting in contact with him, but it's been to no avail. We've even tried to use our spies in the Megrail forces to get an idea of his current whereabouts, but we've got nothing. The princess also appears to have gone missing. Elizabeth's voice continued to drift silently across the chambers as the figure remained seated without making a single sound. Pursing her lips, Elizabeth was about to continue when the figure opened his eyes, revealing a pair of golden orbs that sucked in all the darkness within the room. A powerful pressure enveloped the entire surroundings, causing Elizabeth's chest to stiffen under the pressure. Nevertheless, she kept her posture straight as the figure turned his attention towards her. He's gone missing, Atlas's voice came out softly. Feeling his gaze, Elizabeth lowered her head and nodded. Yes, he's gone missing. I see. There was no fluctuation in Atlas's gaze upon receiving the piece of news. It had to be known that Julian was Atlas's disciple, for him to show little to no emotion at his apparent disappearance. There's no need to concern ourselves with such matters. I've already gotten a good grasp of his current location. He's in Panthea's territory. He's not missing. Quote. Exclamation mark question mark quote. It's also very likely that the Julian we know is gone. Atlas's eyes narrowed slightly, the hum emitting from his body growing louder as his joints started to crack, and he started to move. However, that can be dealt with later. There are more pressing matters at hand. Crack. Pops and cracks echoed with each second as Atlas stood up from his spot and focused his attention on the door of the room. Without saying a single word, he moved towards the door and opened it, revealing a haggard, chained-up figure, his face pale and clothes torn. Atlas stared in Noel's direction before opening his mouth. They've grown impatient. By they, he meant the outer beings. Quote. Although not obvious, I can see through their schemes. They're trying to take complete control of the world, creating a second mirror dimension in the process.